Avengers Infinity War pretty much made it seem as though Thanos might be an unstoppable villain. After all, even the combined efforts of the Avengers and the Guardians couldn't bring him down. But is it possible that our heroes could be facing off against an even greater threat in Avengers 4? We think it's not only possible, but quite likely that a villain even more dangerous than Thanos will emerge. But before we start talking about a villain that might somehow be more powerful than Thanos in Avengers 4, punch that subscribe button and kick that bell to join our notification squad so you never miss any of our MCU videos. Even before Avengers Infinity War, the hype about Thanos was very real in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As a villain, he had enjoyed a long build-up as we saw glances of him and heard stories about his horrific behavior. The third movie in the Avengers franchise showed Thanos finally achieving his goal of obtaining all of the Infinity Stones and putting them into his Infinity Gauntlet. Then, with one quick snap, he eliminated half of all life in the universe. Frankly, it's easy to get caught up on the fact that so many of our beloved cast of heroes disappeared in an instant, but let's not forget the absolutely tremendous fight they put up before they were taken down by Thanos. The Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy joined forces, pulled out all of the stops, and it seemingly still wasn't enough to defeat the Mad Titan. We don't know much about Avengers 4 yet, but we assume that our heroes are somehow going to reverse the actions of Thanos. At this point, that seems pretty impossible since the characters already have enough on their plates. But it wouldn't be like Marvel not to pile on more characters and conflict, even during a time like this. Let's not forget, this is an Infinity War, not just an Infinity Battle, and recently we've started suspecting that we may see another villain get some time in the spotlight during the next movie. There's no denying that Thanos set the bar particularly high for evil deeds and horrifying misuses of power, but that doesn't mean he's the ultimate villain. Now, if there's one thing Marvel loves more than rebooting Spider-Man, it's cultivating a massive amount of intrigue about their upcoming projects. Information about the new movie is scant for a reason, because the studio wants to build anticipation and cash in at the box office. But this doesn't mean we haven't received some tantalizing hints about what comes next. After all, what better way to keep fans obsessing over what comes next than by slowly trickling out information about the project? The answer to that is releasing an exciting new toy which everyone is just going to have to own. During Avengers Infinity War, we saw the God of Thunder and Rocket Raccoon become best buddies. Thor had just lost his home of Asgard, his beloved hammer Mjolnir, and even his traitorous brother Loki. This was the perfect time to make a new pal and reforge a new weapon called Stormbreaker. We've recently seen some Thor and Rocket toys featuring the pair wearing new white suits. Obviously, the new costumes are eye-catching, but some language on the box was even more exciting. It reads, "The Asgardian Thor wields the mighty Stormbreaker in his battle against new foes. Rocket teams up with a new crew to guard the galaxy from an even greater threat." This leaves us wondering just who this new villain or who these new villains could be, and if they could be more powerful than Thanos. At this point, any new villain introduced into Avengers 4 would pretty much have to be more dangerous than Thanos, as hard as that is to believe. After all, Infinity War really ramped up the action and excitement, so it wouldn't make sense to have a lesser villain show up at this time, and when we last saw Thanos, he was looking as if he wasn't completely happy with having completed his task. Comic book fans know the strangely benevolent seeming justification Thanos uses for wiping out half of all life is only in the movies. In the books, Thanos has done all of this for the oldest reason in the books: to impress a girl. But in the movies, Thanos doesn't get comforted in the arms of a creepy skeleton lady and instead is left to sit and think about what he's done. Bad, bad Thanos. And he'll be doing that thinking with the smoldering Infinity Gauntlet that may have been used beyond repair at this point. We aren't saying Thanos is all washed up or anything, but this would be the perfect time for a new and terrifying villain to swoop in and shake things up a bit. And let's not forget that we'll be getting a new hero in this movie as well. Brie Larson will be taking on the mantle of Captain Marvel and will be entering the MCU just a few months before the next Avengers movie in 2019. We know the Captain Marvel movie takes place long before Infinity War, but the post-credits scene made it clear that there's some kind of connection. During this scene, we saw Nick Fury and Maria Hill realize people are starting to disappear. Before they can fade into non-existence, Fury manages to send a signal on what looks like a fancy pager from the 90s. We then see a version of Captain Marvel's star insignia flash on the display of the pager. Captain Marvel showing up to help save the day would be great, but she could be bringing some pretty bad friends with her. Comic book fans are undoubtedly very familiar with the alien races of the Kree, the Skrull, and the infamous Kree-Skrull War. The original Captain Marvel was a member of the Kree race, as was Ronan the Accuser. In one of the most famous comic book arcs of all time, the Kree took on the shape-shifting aliens known as the Skrulls. The Skrulls are in tons of comics and are really hell-bent on invading and conquering the Earth. We know that Captain Marvel will be borrowing tons of elements from the Kree-Skrull War story, including the villains. Not only could we be dealing with bands of powerful shape-shifting aliens, but their leader, Talos, has been working as an undercover agent infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously, we can't say if Talos ends up defeated by Captain Marvel, but it's not too far-fetched to think that he or other members of his race may make an appearance in Avengers 4. When Thanos snapped his fingers at the end of Infinity War, he did a lot more than wipe out half of all life on Earth. Half of all people in the entire universe were affected, and we wouldn't be surprised if other life forms started looking for answers. This seems like a likely time for the Skrull to get involved. After all, with the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy in total chaos, what better time to finally get around to conquering Earth? Another interstellar supervillain with immense powers is Galactus. This cosmic entity has a huge role in the Marvel comics and plays an important part of balancing the universe. Thanos was also pretty big on the whole balance thing, if you recall, so maybe it's time for Galactus to make an appearance. While many villains have sinister or selfish motivations, Galactus consumes the energy from planets just because he's hungry. While he's a being of immense and often unstoppable power, it's really not fair to consider him evil. Galactus is an incredibly interesting character who would help establish more of the Marvel universe outside of our little planet. Having Galactus show up looking for a snack would definitely be an exciting twist. Many fans hope that we could see a favorite character from the comic books who hasn't yet made it onto the big screen, at least for the MCU. Victor Von Doom has been terrorizing some of our favorite heroes for decades in the comics, and many feel as though it's time for him to appear in the MCU. Dr. Doom is known for going head-to-head with the Fantastic Four, but he has a long and storied history of fighting with other major heroes as well. These include the Avengers, Spider-Man, and more. Maybe it could be time for him to fight against what's left of the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy. For a long time, there was a very practical reason that we hadn't seen Dr. Doom as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The rights to his character belonged to 20th Century Fox. But as we all know now, that is a thing of the past. It's expected that eventually, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, and other characters once owned by Fox will make appearances in the MCU. It would certainly be exciting to see Dr. Doom cross over, and we think he would be an interesting villain with which to contrast Thanos. Despite being a human, Dr. Doom managed to make himself essentially a god through his use of magic. As we know, Doctor Strange had some unique advantages and insight during Infinity War, and maybe it's time these two doctors finally get to meet one another. Could it be time for Dr. Doom to finally make it into the MCU? Dr. Doom has long been a foe of the Avengers, but they have plenty of other fascinating enemies as well. One of them is known as Kang the Conqueror. Like Dr. Doom, Kang is a character who was caught up in the whole Fox versus MCU thing. In the comics, Kang is one of the greatest enemies of the Avengers, and now he can finally go head-to-head with them on the big screen. Not only is he a great villain, but his unique type of powers could tie in heavily with the plotline of Avengers 4. Most of us assume that time travel will have something to do with how our heroes end up saving the day. After all, it's not like Marvel would really destroy so many of its beloved and profitable characters all in one go. There has to be a way to bring them back, and time travel seems like a pretty simple solution. And as it just so happens, time travel is something Kang is pretty well versed in. He was once a man named Nathaniel Richards, who utilized time travel technology invented by none other than Dr. Doom himself. After traveling throughout history, he eventually reinvented himself as Kang the Conqueror. He has no superhuman abilities and instead relies on his superior intellect and advanced technology. Sound like any members of the Avengers, you know? Kang flies around on a time ship, which gives him access to technology in any century and allows him to move through time. This could be an invaluable tool when it comes to righting the wrongs done by Thanos and could make Kang a formidable enemy in his own right. There's one more old enemy with close ties to Thanos that some people predict will be seen during Avengers 4. We mentioned earlier that Thanos collected the Infinity Stones in order to impress Lady Death. She is the personification of death itself and a longtime paramour to Thanos in the comic books. In fact, she's such a large part of his story that it seems strange they left her out of the movies. Could it be possible that she finally makes an appearance after half of all life is wiped out? Maybe this was enough to pique her interest and cause her to show up. But we're sorry to say that we just don't see this happening. After all, there has been zero mention of her thus far. It would seem strange for her to come out of nowhere as Thanos' romantic partner. Okay, it's weird to think of anybody dating Thanos, period, really. Sadly, we think fans will have to get used to the idea of Lady Death just not existing in the MCU. Many fans believe that introducing a new villain at all might be too much for the already hectic storyline of the Avengers franchise. Instead, we could see an already well-known villain taking on a bigger role. We were pleasantly surprised to see Red Skull make an appearance during Infinity War, and it's possible he could take on an even bigger role in the next film. Writers Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus have admitted that they can't get enough of Red Skull, and we know many fans who agree. In addition, they also stated that his story has just begun in the MCU. It's been revealed that Red Skull is free to leave Vormir whenever he chooses, and he may still desire to possess an Infinity Stone. Although we love getting to see characters from the comics make it into the MCU, it might just be too much right now considering everything that's going on. That being said, a well-established villain like Red Skull might make a great fit and step up in a huge way during the 4th Avengers movie. And those were just some of the villains that might step up and replace Thanos in Avengers 4. Do you think we'll get to see a new villain in the next movie? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more MCU videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.